know, my name is Erica Smith. I'm a lifelong resident of Lewis County, most of that in Croghan, and a 1991 graduate of the Orange Marine across the river. I've been married to my husband Bruce for 25 years, and we have 3 children. Our girls, Regan, 19, Peyton, 14, and our son Cameron in the middle at 16. I've held several secretarial jobs, but for the past 9 years I've worked for Dr. Leidecker and Dr. Palmer here in Melville. I am the wife of an alcoholic and the mother of 3 children that I pray will never be. And though I don't speak with professional or educated knowledge, I do speak of raw, real-life experience. A little bit of this will be repetitive if you heard me speak last month, but for those that didn't, I think it's important for you to know a little of the history. Maya Angelou said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." And I've thought about this quote more since I spoke last month, so I'd like to tell you our story and why I felt the need to begin to share it. Long story short, alcohol addiction nearly destroyed our perfect family. It didn't happen overnight, and we never saw it coming, but even so, we ended up smack in the middle of it. Bruce and I come from strong Christian families. To my knowledge, neither of us had any childhood traumas. Both sets of parents and all 4 sets of grandparents never divorced, and 9 of those 12 people were alive to hold all 3 of our children. 6 of them still are. Because of a family history I know very little about, I've never seen Bruce's parents drink, but mine do occasionally, and usually it's for some sort of special celebration. Neither one of us was offered drugs of any kind in high school, not even a cigarette, and to this day I've not laid eyes on any illegal drugs, and I am totally okay with that. I was allowed sips of wine at the family table while growing up, but had more fun running my fingers along the edge of the crystal glass to make it sing like my dad taught me. My first and last real underage drinking was at a friend's party when I was about 15. I remember her mother sitting in the kitchen where the alcohol was, and though I don't recall who handed it to me, I know her mom was the one that purchased it for us. I drank half of that wine cooler and still feel a little guilty. I've never been drunk. I don't believe that I've ever had more than 2 glasses of wine or a mixed drink at any given time. We were never party goers, and when we did choose to go to one of my graduation parties, or class's graduation parties, we stayed for only about an hour because neither one of us felt comfortable there. We were a safe couple, nothing to worry about. Our family would be just fine. After a dozen or so years of marriage, though, I slowly came to the frightening realization that my husband was an alcoholic. I can't recall one time in the 3 years that we dated where I witnessed him drink, and I can only recall 2 times in the following 7 years or so that I saw him drunk. But sometime after that, things changed. Life changed. I didn't notice at first. I was too busy probably being a mom and a wife. When I did notice, I chose to ignore it for a long time. It will get better, only it didn't. And then when I couldn't ignore it any longer, things were completely out of control. We went from that perfect family to a nearly non-existent one. Bruce stopped being the husband and father that we needed him to be. I doubled up on responsibilities and overdosed myself on stress and worry. We did very limited things together as a family. The few vacations that we attempted in those years did not create the special memories for me that one would expect, and family functions usually pushed me over the edge. It was a rare occasion to go out or have friends over, and leaving the kids home without me became impossible for me. Bruce stopped going to church, and I made the decision to return to my home church. At home, we distanced ourselves from each other. We walked on eggshells and stopped communicating, and we stopped having fun. The kids had fewer and fewer friends over. Financially, we were a mess. At the worst of it, we were even subjected to a CPS investigation, something that you never want to go through. I've never felt such humiliation and fear as I did during that period of time. I believe the kids would agree when I say that we felt like we lived with 2 Bruces, the the sober one and the drunk one. Most days, you never knew who you were going to get, and coming home at the end of the day from work or school was not usually something to look forward to. It eventually got bad enough that I sadly admit I was often relieved when his car was not home when I approached the driveway. We, and I say we because I was as much to blame as Bruce, we put on those masks of happiness, and no one was the wiser for a long time. Not our friends, not our coworkers, not our family or our parents. We even hid a lot of it from the kids, at least it seemed that way at the time. When people did find out, most had a very hard time believing and accepting the truth. Much of that was due to the fact that Bruce almost always drank in isolation. He rarely drank in public, except when he was DJing. Stephen King wrote, "We are only as sick as our secrets." Well, we were very, very sick. Bruce eventually lost his job teaching at Beaver River, and away we all lost home. I had this view of the school as our home away from home since we were in kindergarten. We each spent 13 years there, and shortly after college and marriage, he began teaching there, and I would spend hours helping in his classroom. Eventually, our own children were there, and in various capacities, we walked in and out of that building on a daily basis for 40 years. Beaver River was our community. When his alcoholism finally became public, I was amazed at the response from that community in particular. There were some faculty and staff that wrapped us in their arms and loved us in various practical ways. I am very thankful for them. They were a vital part of our survival, but there were others that didn't. There were some that I thought we were close to that have come to barely speak to us today. I haven't decided if it's a better than you mentality or if it was just the fear of not knowing what to say or do. But I'm finding myself agreeing with this quote I recently read. If you're struggling and your people are just sitting there watching you struggle, they're not your people. We kept a great number of our people through this fight with alcoholism, but we had to learn to get new people too. At some point in the fight, I realized that I needed to stop trying to save Bruce, who at the time didn't want to be saved, and start trying to save myself and the children. To do that, I had to start being honest, first with myself, then with them, and then with those around us. I had a very difficult time telling the kids what was going on because I wanted to keep them as innocent as I could, but I had to learn that I could tell them the scary facts without scarring them for life. They now know that they are the children of an alcoholic, an addict. They know that they are at risk of becoming the same if they make the wrong choices when trying to cope with the tiny to the overwhelming stressors in their lives. They know this because I stopped being afraid and I began being the better parent. Today, we have very blunt conversations about alcohol and drugs, to the point now where sometimes they're giving the mom speech before I can formulate the thought. Being the spouse of an alcoholic or addict is a position that I didn't know how to control. I couldn't ground him, I couldn't take away his toys, or his alcohol for that matter. Trust me, I tried. I couldn't walk away and relinquish commitments and responsibilities, and I chose not to take any legal steps regarding our marriage or the kids. It's a much different perspective when you're the spouse of an alcoholic and not a parent or child, at least in my experience. I feel like that relationship in regard to addiction is spoken of and counseled about less than any other relationship. Even when I visited in rehab for the family sessions, it was rare to find another spouse there. Most of the time it was a parent or a child. At one intensive family session I was attending, one counselor even came to that realization. I'm hoping that because of that, they have made some changes to include the spouse relationship more in the future in that particular setting. None of us is immune to addiction. It may not be in your immediate family right now, but I'm certain that you know other family members or friends that have been directly affected. And if not quite yet, addiction is knocking at your door. So what can we do? If you're here, you've already taken a step toward dealing with this. Just admitting that there is an issue right here in your school, your neighborhood, and putting your fears aside to deal with it certainly is a great beginning. Bruce and I recently attended a conference and learned 2 equations. Information minus application equals information. But information plus application equals transformation. If nothing else, know that the information you learn can transform you or someone else, but only if it's applied. I will tell you these things for a fact. You are wasting your time if you are trying to get rid of the stashes of drugs or alcohol that you keep finding. Your loved one is just going to find and buy more. You are wasting your money if you are trying to buy your loved one out of their responsibility or their legal issues. You are wasting your energy by shaming and isolating and punishing, and you're wasting life by not being a positive influence and making personal connections. Addicts do not choose to be addicts. No one puts that down as the answer in kindergarten when asked what they want to be when they grow up. No one wakes up one morning halfway through college deciding to change their major to alcoholism. They may be predisposed to addiction due to genetics. They may have become addicted to painkillers after a major surgery. This happens way more often than you think. Or they could be trying to numb the emotional pain from abuse or stress or loneliness or any other number of things. They may be unable to love themselves and to be present any longer in their own circumstances. The last thing they need is to be pitied or shamed or punished. The hateful comments that I read on social media after a drug arrest or an overdose have begun to infuriate me. Addicts are humans too. They are parents and children and siblings and friends and coworkers, just like all of us sitting here. And just like us, they need your love and your empathy. They need you to pick up the phone and include them in a normal conversation. They need an invitation to dinner or a day out. They need a ride to their next meeting. They might need someone to sit with them through that meeting. They need an encouraging card in the mail. They need someone to take a walk with. They need someone to listen to their fears and their frustrations. They need someone to hold them when they cry. Yes, they also need tough love and professional counseling and sometimes legal intervention, but mostly they just need you. And so does their family. If you're one to take a casserole when your neighbor dies, you should also be the one to take one when your neighbor's child ends up in jail. Grief is grief. No matter how you are related to the addict in your life, things will be very, very difficult if you choose to maintain any sort of relationship. Your first concern should always be to take care of yourself. I used to mentally roll my eyes at that saying so often repeated from the airline safety speech, put your own oxygen mask on first. However, not only is it true, it's necessary. You cannot help anyone else if you can't breathe yourself. So put on the oxygen, inhale a long, sweet, life-giving breath, and just do the next thing, only the next thing. You may need counseling together or separately. Do it. You may need to live separately for a while. If so, do that too. I did everything in my power to avoid living apart, but in hindsight, physical separation may have been one of the catalysts to saving us. In marriage, separation doesn't always have to lead to divorce. Thankfully, it didn't for us. But it can give you the space you need to figure out how to move forward, hopefully together, from the ugly space you are currently in. You will need to be very, very patient. Mitch does not like that word. I believe forbearance is the word he prefers. Long-suffering might be another appropriate term. It probably depends on the context of the conversation, but be patient anyway, even when you don't want to be. Things will not change overnight. It wasn't overnight that got you into whatever the mess you're in to begin with. You will need to go learn things, as one of my favorite TV characters likes to say. You will need to change your own self while remembering that you cannot change the addict in your life. And you will need to repeat those things over and over and over again. Long-suffering fits quite well there. If you're willing to put in the hard work, things will change. Show those around you, especially the children in your life, that broken things don't always have to be thrown away. I love watching the show Flea Market Flip. The contestants purchase old, outdated, even broken items and transform them into beautiful, new, and useful things. Sometimes, God willing, broken things, and more importantly, broken people can be repaired. Show those around you that even though giving up may be the easy thing to do, it may not always be the right thing to do. Things may not work out the way you plan on or hope for, but you will be okay knowing that you did the best you could, trying to do the best you could. Personally, I also needed to learn a better art of love and forgiveness. It hurts me to say this, but I did not like Bruce very much of the time that he was drinking. I did, however, make the choice every day to love him and forgive him, daily and repeatedly. It was much easier to be sad or angry, and I was, sometimes I still am. But it's so difficult to love and forgive. It takes a lot of work and a whole lot more patience, there's that word again. But not doing so and holding on to those negative feelings just hurt me more than it hurt him. So I made a conscious decision to love him anyway, even when he drank and turned into someone that rubbed my emotions raw. I loved and forgave over and over again. I had to learn that forgiveness does not in any way excuse the action, but it does help the action from destroying you. Today, after several years of turmoil that included 6 rehabs and a gazillion meetings with counselors, AA groups, and a drug court judge, I'm able to say that Bruce has been sober since January 20th of 2016, 1 year, 2 months, 3 days. In January, he invited me to the AA meeting where he was presented with his 1-year coin. It has been a long road from there to here, and I never thought we'd see the end of it. In reality, we haven't. We will live with alcoholism forever. I can only pray that the most painful part of the journey is over, and we can now begin to rebuild and restore and move forward. I don't tell him this enough, but I am proud of you, Bruce, for finally deciding to take this road, and grateful each day for your sobriety. Someone recently asked me, now that I look back, what would I have done differently? One of the biggest things I would change would be to tell our story sooner. To open up, even just to one person, and reach out and receive help. To be real, to take off the mask that was hiding my true self. To stop giving power to the secrets. Just a couple of weeks ago, a woman came up to thank me for speaking out at the meeting last month. Our story is unfortunately very similar to hers. Changed the names, and I could have been talking about her and her family. Only I didn't know it until a couple of weeks ago. I don't know that I've ever met her husband, but I have known her since high school. She was a few years ahead of me. I know where she lives. I know her family. 2 of our children are even in the same class. We could have been helping each other all of this time and missed out on that because we were both silent. Her bravery in opening up to me was a light bulb moment. Giving words to the experiences and feelings I have can maybe give hope and encouragement to someone experiencing and feeling the same things. Her words of thanks were just what I needed to confirm that I am doing the right thing and I am helping others. I would like to stress that no matter how you feel, you are not alone. Alone is all I felt for so many years. Most of it was of my own making. I rarely opened up or reached out, and I will tell you that this is a perfect recipe for failure. I personally believe that isolation is one of the biggest reasons our family ended up in this disease called alcoholism. Bruce isolated, I isolated, and we unknowingly taught the kids to isolate. That being said, my advice to you is this: find a good friend, a pastor, a counselor, a small group, an Al-Anon meeting, anyone that will listen without judging, anyone that will offer you hope and encouragement, anyone that will be your Aaron or her on top of the hill, anyone that will just plain hold you together when you feel like you're falling apart. The same person that asked what I would have done differently also asked why I didn't leave Bruce. Honestly, I wanted to. I took it so far as to actually pray for physical abuse or infidelity so that I had a clear biblical reason to leave. Because of my own personal beliefs, that would be the only reason I would have left. God never answered those prayers the way I wanted him to. Instead, in hindsight, I see now that he told me no. In all his drunken anger, Bruce never raised a hand to me or the kids, and he never had an affair. Those were the two deal breakers that God never allowed. I realize how strange that might sound to some of you. Society doesn't look at marriage the same way that I do, but that's the only answer I can give to that question. God never released me, so I stayed. Another person recently asked these questions. How does it make you feel now that your story has been told? And was it worth sharing? Immediately after I spoke last month in February, I sat down for the remainder of the presentation, and my body literally shook for 20 minutes. One of my coworkers said it was the adrenaline, and I remember it explained to me as the baby shakes after the birth of my son. Uncontrollable entire body shaking. I couldn't imagine that anything I said that night was worth the fear and agony I had just put myself through by opening our life even more than it already was. At the end of the evening, however, and frequently since, I have been inundated with positive and encouraging Facebook comments, personal message and texts, phone calls, cards. People stop me at my desk at work or in the store or some other random place. Some are offering continued support. Some are saying that they can relate in one way or another. And some are not saying a single word, just physically confirming me with their hug. I love the hugs. I draw unexplainable strength from them. So to answer the questions, how does it feel, or how does it make you feel now that your story has been told? I feel a bit naked and transparent, but more so liberated and mask-free. I feel like I can offer hope and love and encouragement to someone else that may need it. And was it worth sharing? Well, it was very humbling to confess last month to my parents while they were surrounded by a couple of hundred people that my 15-year-old self drank way back then. But yes, it was worth it overall. Great things never come from comfort zones. Lord knows I'm way out of mine. This is why I will continue to tell our story, to further heal my own self and my family, and to help others do the same. That is the only reason I can think of for us to have endured the hell we have. You see, I'm coming to believe that our stories are instrumental in defeating the evil of this world. We should not be ashamed of our scars or keep them hidden away. They're treasures. It is by these very scars that others can be encouraged and saved. If you take nothing else away from this, please know are not alone and you are stronger than you think. Be brave and tell your story. There is nothing small about it when you tell the broken and the beautiful truth about your life. Don't be ashamed, if for no other reason than to save yourself and to give others the hope they so desperately need. Thank you.